They call this case the Black Swan. In the words of Stephanie Murphy, Doug Benefield's family attorney, she said, "To Doug, Ashley is this innocent, pure white swan. But underneath those white feathers, she's an evil woman. She's the Black Swan." Today, Ashley Benefield is also called a killer, charged with murdering her husband, Doug Benefield, in Florida back in September of 2020.
He's saying the neighbor came over, female neighbor. It was a domestic. She shot her husband.
Ashley and Doug first crossed paths in August of 2016 at a dinner party in Florida during the presidential campaign. The two bonded over guns, God, and the Second Amendment. I'm getting a little Mr. and Mrs. Smith vibes here as I imagine this big political event with champagne and companionship where Ashley is smoothly operating on Doug's vulnerable affections toward her by showing him that she has a gun in her bra and her handbag. Yes, that is one of the ways that she was able to win her potential future husband over. She showed him that she had a gun and she flaunted her sex appeal. He found it irresistible. He just couldn't help himself as he texted her, "Nice getting to know you, Ashley Oakley," with a flirty, winky face emoji. Kind of an inside joke, as Annie Oakley was a U.S. Western 19th century sharpshooter who starred in the Buffalo Bills Wild West show. Despite their significant age gap, Doug being 54 and Ashley only 24, it didn't seem to matter much. In fact, Doug was instantly smitten with Ashley, finding her to be the most gorgeous and incredible person in this world. At the time they met, Ashley worked in a campaign office of Donald Trump in Sarasota, Florida. According to Ashley's journal, she was traveling on Trump's plane when Trump showered her with compliments as she wrote, "He called me a bombshell, his little girl, and his baby." Doug Benefield was a recently widowed 54-year-old Navy veteran. It said within a week that the two were exchanging the powerful words of "I love you" to one another. Less than 2 weeks later, 13 days to be exact from meeting each other, the two were married. Married by Doug's close friend named Tripp. Tripp had his reservations on the timing. I mean, who wouldn't? But ultimately, he agreed to marry them. He said, "I realized that Doug's mind was made up and I was just being a good friend." When he was asked, "What were you thinking marrying these people?" Now, Doug had been married twice prior to Ashley. His first marriage ended in divorce, but his second wife, Renee, unexpectedly passed away due to an undiagnosed heart condition just 9 months prior to him remarrying Ashley. The person who found Renee's body was Doug and Renee's daughter named Eva. She was just 15 years old at the time that she lost her mother. I personally think that Eva is adorable, and she uses some dark humor, and she's a little, got this little immature underlining thing about her, but she kind of owns it. She's got the courage to build a page on TikTok for discussion on what has transpired. I think that is very bold. I think that's a lot of courage, and because of that, her voice will be heard through the content here today to help guide us in understanding the events that kind of happened through her eyes on a few different occasions.
Okay, listen up, guys. I know all you little sewer rats want a story time, so I'm gonna give it to you. I even pulled up my chair. When I was 15, my mom died of an underlying heart condition, and then my dad was out of town, and then I came home from school and I found her. So that was the start of a lot of trauma. And then after that, my dad came home and he specifically told me, "Don't worry, Eva, I'm never going to get married again." Well, he didn't use those exact words, but that's how I remember it. And then after that, it was a Friday after school, and he was like, "So I'm seeing this girl." And I was like, "Okay." And then he picked her up from the airport the next day, and I met her, and he was like, "She's super cool. She's a model and a ballerina." And I was like, "Okay, like, cool. She's kind of hot, but I don't see the hype. She's 23, dude. Like, come on." But then I was like, "All right, well, you're allowed to date. Like, you're a single man. I get it." And then the next day he was like, "We need to have a family meeting." And I was like, no, because we're not a family, and the only thing that you should have to tell me is if you propose. And as soon as those words came out of my mouth, he goes, we're married. And I was like, what? So I drove myself, even though I only had my permit. If you're a cop, please don't arrest me. This was years ago. I only had my permit, and I drove myself to my best friend's house, and I was like, guys, my dad's actually married to this little skank. And they were like, what? And then I was like, yeah. And I have 2 older, like, half brothers. They're on my mom's side, though. And I told them, and they're like, she's younger than us. And I was like, I know. And so then after that, I just kind of like tried to get used to her, but she was like totally not that nice. She was cool at first, but then she wasn't. I tried to get used to her because I was like, okay, well, like, this is reality. He's married. And so then at first she was nice, and then she kind of would like twist my words and make my dad get mad at me. Keep in mind, me and my dad were like very close. Like, since my mom died, me and my dad were always close. I was always like me and my dad were just best friends. I was close to my mom too, but like me and my dad like had a different level kind of bond.
She would twist my words and get my dad to get mad at me. Eva is a smart young woman. Gosh, who does that? What kind of people do things like that? Toxic is the answer. People that do baiting and lie and isolate a loved one from things that matter in their lives. Sounds like Ashley might be using a tactic here. Nevertheless, this is a mess, okay? It's a clear mess here. The reality of what Doug has chosen to do here seems like there was, something real special that he saw between Ashley and Doug that only Doug could understand, because it doesn't make a lot of sense looking at it or into it that he would lose his wife, jump headfirst into a marriage with a woman that is 9 years older than his own daughter, honestly old enough to be his daughter. And that is not an offensive statement to anybody here that is married, older or younger. I'm just saying, in this particular case, given the fact that a crime occurred, seems to me that he did not know this woman at all. And he did all of this in less than 2 weeks of meeting. And obviously, it's just sad with the notable issues here with his daughter Eva, who is still grieving and is still traumatized by the discovery of finding her mother deceased. Shortly after they were married, at some point, Ashley ended up calling the officiant Trip. And she cried, and she said that she was afraid that Doug would choose his daughter Eva over Ashley. Then there was the time a computer scientist who shared an office space with Doug said, "You've got Doug here to show you around and take care of you while you're here." And Ashley responded, "I can take care of myself," and surprised the colleague by pulling a gun out of her jean shorts. So she just does shit like this. She finds it cute. Doug's colleague ended up recalling on this, and he's like, it was very bizarre. She did it in sort of a giggling manner, and I didn't feel threatened, but it's a very socially awkward thing to do when you first meet someone. To me, yes, that goes far beyond social awareness. That is just selfish. That's just a shitty thing to do to somebody. Like, how disrespectful can you actually be? Carrying on, nothing else mattered but what Doug thought, because that was his wife, and Doug was completely smitten with this woman. In January of 2017, they started writing each other in a 5-year Q&A a day journal, which consisted of very sappy, extreme messages of love for each other. Both responded to prompts like, "If you could go back in time and change something, what would it be?" And Doug said, "Be with Ashley my whole life. Ashley, I love him." Or, "Who do you feel the closest to?" The journal asked in April of 2017. Doug said, "Ashley, she is part of me." Ashley said, "Doug, I never want to be without him." Ashley opened her ballet business called the American National Ballet in Charleston, South Carolina, and what I understand is that Doug was helping finance this business for her. Doug obviously prayed that it would go well, as any good spouse does when making an investment on behalf of their partner. But the ballet company failed quickly. Doug knew nothing about ballet to begin. He was just doing this because it was his wife's dream. And Ashley was supposed to be the leader. She was the face of the company. She was supposed to be present. She was orchestrating the whole thing. This went really bad. There was this noble mission for the Benefields to extend a lifeline to people that were into dancing and to give them a shot at a real life and a real career dancing. These dancers were really big dancers who were recruited to join Ashley's company. For those that were chosen as the dancers for this company, they got an email that was quickly selling the idea that joining the team under Ashley's dream was going to literally change lives. So people get this very inviting, promising email and get very excited about this opportunity. But soon, the dancers were said to have started to doubt the company's true goal in recruiting these individuals. There were very short responses in emails alongside these really exaggerated, huge, big announcement and promises for those that were invited and recruited to participate. While they started building the ballet company, Ashley became pregnant, which again shocked Eva, Doug's daughter, because she didn't even know that her father had reversed his vasectomy. Eva is just like shocked after shocked after shocked. And it's like ever since she found her mother and Ashley came in her life, it's just been shocking. All these events are just happening and they're happening so fast. The point is, while she was starting this ballet company with Doug, Ashley purposefully became pregnant. That's the bottom line for what's going to happen next.
And apparently they weren't supposed to be able to have a kid for a while, but then boom, they had a kid. So there was a little baby on the way and I was like, are you kidding me? Like, Dad, come on. I can't catch a break. This is freaking bullshit.
So remember the journal entries that they were sharing. Well, stress was beginning to emerge within those journal entries, such as feeling stressed out. Doug allegedly was at his breaking point, I'm sure, kind of knowing the pattern of how people like Ashley work. He probably didn't even understand why, but he just knew that his patience at his age, the guy is almost 55. It's just running very thin. I'm not making excuses at all. Violence is never okay, but, I get the whole short fuse thing. Doug allegedly ended up punching a dog in the face, and incidents like punching a hole in the wall at the home. And also, worse, he got out of control, ended up firing a bullet into the ceiling of the home. I can just see this guy in my head just losing it. And he doesn't even know why. Like, he's got his life made. I don't know what's going on, Like, have you ever felt that way with someone that's using and abusing you? I'm not gonna say Ashley is. I'm just telling you that's usually the reaction here. And I'm sure that Doug thought all was okay. Like, he felt forgiven and he felt like maybe he could learn his lessons and forgive himself, because a few days later, after lodging a bullet in the ceiling, the two of them seemed fine and they ended up proceeding with a wedding reception for themselves. So while they're getting this company going and Ashley becomes pregnant, Ashley begins to suffer from nausea and she goes to Florida so her mother can take care of her in July of 2017. Meanwhile, the business is still going, the dream is being built on the side, but it starts failing really bad as she ended up leaving her husband and her stepdaughter behind to care for only herself in the pregnancy. And it might seem like she's just really kind of screwing Doug and Eva over the most during this time, but she was literally destroying goals and lives of people that she made promises to through her business in the ballet. She was destroying her own dream and taking people down the rabbit hole with her. Like, wow. Sit down, it gets worse. In August, just weeks before the dancers were due to arrive, Ashley was communicating with Doug just solely about her. He's trying to get this business under wraps for her. And she's like, baby, I feel so horrible. Baby, I literally can't move. I feel so sick. They decided that Ashley should continue staying over there to rest in her mother's care out in Florida, and that Doug should stay in Charleston to focus on her dream, the ballet. The separation for Doug was immensely hard. He said that he felt nauseated without her around. So he's almost addicted to this woman. I don't know. Just look at the patterns. Just start picking up on the patterns here. Why is a 54-year-old man that captivated and wrapped around somebody that tight? Why in the world would somebody abandon his daughter's emotions to tend to another woman's emotions? I mean, we've been here over and over again. We know there are specific types of people in the world that can literally keep us hooked to the string, as they are the masters and we have been their puppets. And during this time, they both expressed missing each other deeply. That's also very important for what's going to happen in the near future. On September 18th, the day of the highly anticipated launch for the American National Ballet Company, Doug went to the studios to oversee the arrival of the dancers. Meanwhile, Ashley embarked on a 500-mile journey to South Carolina with her mother. She did not tell Doug that she was coming to town. Instead, she quietly entered their shared home, took all of her things, and left behind a note expressing her decision to leave him. Ashley listed 21 complaints in a series of bullet points. These concerns ranged from his behavior, saying, "You, Doug, frequently yell at me, scream, and use profanity toward me." She accused him of having black mold on the walls and unsafe tap water. She makes mention of him breaking and throwing objects, even once causing damage with the loaded gun in the ceiling. So all that forgiveness, yes, let's proceed, let's go forward, let's do our wedding reception. I don't know, that suddenly gets brought up like you're a dangerous guy, even though she herself proceeded with the marriage. And then she made one thing very, very clear. Just leave me alone. Don't bother me. Don't follow me. Don't call me. If you call even so much as my mother, we're not answering your calls.
My dad was managing this like crazy international ballet company that apparently was like a huge deal. And so he was stressed out, and I was stressed out because he was stressed out, and Ashley was like having a terrible pregnancy. And anyways, so then Ashley decides that she's gonna go live with her mom in Florida for the time being, because she was having such a bad pregnancy. Like, she was like just sick all the time. Well, I don't know. I've never been pregnant, so I don't really know like how bad they can get, but I guess they can get very bad, like the symptoms and stuff. So she went down to stay with her mom in Florida because my dad didn't have the time to take care of her juggling all of these things. She went down to Florida, and things got better because she was out of the picture for me and my dad. Me and my dad were so freaking close. So I was like, cool, Ashley's not here anymore. And then one day, it was like probably a couple months later, I came home from school and my dad wasn't home. And then I went inside and all of her stuff was gone too. And then there was a note on the bed and I was like, fuck, alright, I'm gonna have to pick up all the pieces. I know exactly what happened. So my dad came home, he read the note, and I've never seen that man, other than the time that he cried at my mom's funeral. I could just see like the hurt in his eyes.
Doug was completely wrecked. Like, he started making desperate promises. Like, I know this is all my fault. I will never talk to you that way again. I will never act that way again. I am so sorry that at that time that I was breaking, I wasn't stronger for you. But then Ashley took it a big giant step further. She ended up calling authorities, and CPS came knocking on his door, which Eva ended up getting in the middle of this huge, messy spider web. CPS was coming numerous occasions and checking in with Eva and pressing her for questions about her father. Is your dad a good guy? Yes, he wouldn't hurt anyone. And it finally got to the point where Eva had said, I just stopped talking to them. I just started saying, I'm not going to talk with you. My dad is gone. When he comes back, you can talk to him. So Doug ended up being in the midst of this wild CPS investigation. Eventually, he was cleared. And also, he was supposedly evaluated by a psychologist, and that also came back cleared. Once that's all done, he's in this horrible mess of this ballet business. So he's scrambling to keep the business afloat. Going back to this business of hers that he was running, the company had 47 dancers from all over the world, with a company budget to start this business of $2.5 million. The dancers were promised 8-month contracts, health insurance, and the dancers from places like Germany and Argentina were promised American visas. Well, that $2.5 million didn't exist. Doug clung to the hope that he could gather and borrow enough money to avoid getting caught. He had borrowed what's said to be tens of thousands of dollars in order to pay the dancers their first salary. The dancers had shown up to win, with a vision of hope that was promised in contract. A facility was also promised, and it did not exist at this point, and the paychecks arrived late if they were even paid at all. All these people agreed to share Ashley's dream, and she wasn't even there. So they were thinking, okay, fine, when she comes back, because she's the one, she took all the credit in the beginning while it was getting financed and built and, laid out on paper, and they were hiring people. She was the face for that. So Doug is in the middle of this mess, looking like he has no control. And people are like, well, where's Ashley? We want to talk to Ashley. We want to work under Ashley. She was like their little hero. I mean, they didn't know any better, right? But she's nowhere to be found. So Doug looks like the husband that's making all this fall apart. He ends up like going to the bank and withdrawing cash out of his own bank accounts to pay these people cash with what little he had. In late October, the dancers were called into a meeting and they were told to sign non-disclosure agreements, and 23 dancers were fired. At this point in time, ironically, Ashley publicly goes on Facebook. It's still there, by the way, if you ever want to check it out. She disowned the project. Doug is horrified. I mean, not only the CPS, and not only getting abandoned, and not only has his relationship with his daughter had been estranged, and now he's building on that too, and he's like older. Oh my gosh. He's like going through it. He pleaded with her. He's like, please take down the post. You are hurting people who are staying. Her response was, well, what about all the people whose lives were just ruined? But it was too late. Doug reminded her, there is no money. The company went down in flames. I mean, wrecking lives, from what I understand. Some people had quit their jobs and moved there for this dream that had failed. Given up their rooms, their apartments, their housing, flew out there, were made huge promises just to get fired. Yeah. And then there was Doug, who was said to be out $100,000 by the time the company had failed as a whole. Suddenly, Ashley is just kind of getting a little weird. She's been very distant, the whole note thing. Well, it's said that at this point in time, she started speculating on his previous marriage with Renee, who had suddenly died at only 56 years old. Ashley then believed that Doug had tried to poison Ashley. And she put this story together in her mind that, oh, wow, you know what? He's been making me tea. Yeah, he makes me tea. I think he killed Renee. Yeah. Now, whether this was a plot to set Doug up or this was really her thought process, I do think later, no matter where this story ends up, she had convinced herself that these lies were true. And that was also said by his daughter, Eva. But for now, she's brewing all these ideas in her head like, yeah, oh, she thinks she's sick. She's like becoming this like hypochondriac, Like, what is wrong with me? Oh, I don't feel good because I'm pregnant. Ooh. And then Doug ended up gifting his wife some tea for her birthday. So she's like, oh my God. She ends up taking the tea to the police and they found nothing. But at first they're like, ew, they're wearing their masks and they got the tongs and they're putting it in the hazardous material. And they're like, we'll get this checked out, miss. And they bring back the results. They're like, that was tea. You know what she does next? She's like, what's happening to me? I'm really sick. I know my own body. First time pregnancy, things happen that she doesn't expect, allegedly. I don't know how much research she's done on pregnancy, but yeah, your body changes, Ashley. But what does she do? Snip, she cuts off a piece of her hair and she sends it off to a lab for testing. I guess in her mind, the test came back that there were metals detected, such as aluminum and zinc. Doug would later need to get an attorney. Okay. And so at this point, the attorney would dispute this claim, saying that her levels were normal because when you're pregnant, you have to get a lot of different lab work done. And she always got that work done when she started being pregnant, and the lab work was always fine. Well, she's still in Florida. And so 3 weeks before their baby was due, Ashley checked herself into a hospital claiming that she was poisoned and abused by her husband, including an allegation that her husband was stalking her down in Florida, even though he's all the way in South Carolina. So the hospital naturally took this very seriously, and they gave her an alias name in the hospital by the name of Christina. Ashley ended up having a C-section within a couple days later of this, and she did not tell Doug. This baby was named something completely different than Ashley had picked out with Doug, and he was not listed on the birth certificate. Ashley, in her head, continued to fear that she was poisoned, so she received treatments for herself and the baby. The treatments consisted of 26 sessions of oxygen therapy, which is the type of therapy that is usually reserved for scuba divers with decompression sickness or firefighters with carbon monoxide poisoning. So, I mean, she was going the distance. She's like, I'm sick. This is what we're doing to stay safe. So Doug ended up eventually legally requesting to see their infant daughter, whom he had yet to meet. Meanwhile, Ashley claimed that she had been a victim of domestic abuse and attempted poisoning, and she sought a restraining order against him. But later, Doug's attorney that he would hire later on would have to come back to this point in time, address it, and say, yeah, but Ashley had mentioned and vowed and expressed so many different times that she loved Doug.
July 2018, Ashley Benefield and her estranged husband, Doug, are in a Sarasota courtroom. Ashley had given birth to their daughter 4 months earlier, but had immediately filed an injunction against Doug, alleging domestic violence.
He was verbally abusive. He would yell and scream at me, and he would threaten me. He had insinuated that outside of the military that he had connections and that he could kill people, that he could make people disappear. And I begged him to not shoot the gun. And he said that I was going to have to watch him shoot his brains out. On multiple occasions, he hurt our pets in order to hurt me. So I have concerns that he would do something like that to the child as well.
The judge ruled that Ashley's request for sole custody was denied.
There is not a single scintilla of credible evidence that Miss Benefield has ever been poisoned or suffered from any illness of any poison.
Over the next 2 years, Ashley appealed the court's decision and continued making allegations of abuse against Doug. They were both ordered to undergo psychological evaluations, the results of which were scheduled to be released 3 days after Doug was killed.
Now, it is said that by November of 2018, the two had enrolled in marriage counseling. But on Easter weekend of 2019, the whole family on Ashley's side and Doug's side went out to dinner, and Ashley and her mother ended up pulling Eva aside. They ended up pretty much interrogating Eva, saying, did you know that your father killed your mother, Renee? Did you know that? And Eva didn't buy it. She's like, no, get away from me. This isn't the case. My father loved my mother very much. No. Clearly somebody in this story is crazy, okay? Which is it, Doug or Ashley? Well, let's think. It's Easter. Why is this woman causing issues on a holiday? Why did she cause issues when her daughter was born? Why did Ashley cause issues when she started her ballet company? Why did Ashley cause issues with Doug and his daughter when they first married? Are you getting where my mind is going here? Is there really a point in time that Ashley ever entered Doug and Eva's life and was not creating a problem somewhere, somehow with whoever? After the spring and the incident with Easter of this big family ordeal, pulling Eva aside and whatnot, Doug is under the impression that they've been back together. But he starts growing really suspicious of Ashley. They're not divorced at this time, and suddenly it's noticed that Ashley is wearing what looks like an engagement ring on her finger. So to confirm his suspicions, it said that he placed a tracking device on her car and he hired a PI who confirmed, yeah, Ashley was seeing another man. So at this point in time, Doug's like, you know what? I'm out. I'm done. I give up. I'm not doing this. He's like, I'm so done. But ironically and randomly, Ashley then accused Doug of doing horrible things to their daughter, to which Doug then had to write an email to the sheriff. And in the email, he's having this moment of clarity and discovery about Ashley. He wrote his concerns about her potentially having a split personality. Then dang it, he takes her back. She comes up with this idea, like, you know what? Why don't we just all move away to Maryland? Me, you, the baby, my mom, and we'll start totally over. And Doug's friends have come out on interviews and they're like, what was he thinking? We'll never know. But they knew he was solid, so they knew that she was getting to his head. And they just kind of knew that there was no stopping Doug and his desire and obsession and love for his wife, Ashley. So on September 22nd of 2020, Doug Benefield was preparing to begin his new life.
They were both ordered to undergo psychological evaluations, the results of which were scheduled to be released 3 days after Doug was killed.
It is the state's contention that the defendant did not want this report to come out. It was not positive towards her. Her goal was to move to Maryland and start over with DCF and the police up there, and maybe someone would believe her.
The day he was killed, Doug was at Ashley's home to help her pack up a U-Haul for her move to Maryland. He was unarmed when he was shot twice, once in the leg and once in the chest. Ashley says she was acting in self-defense after Doug body-checked her 2 times, hit her with a box, and grabbed her arm.
He's saying the neighbor came over, female neighbor. It was a domestic. She shot her husband.
Will a jury, you think, buy her story about being a victim?
It's connected to a goal, and that goal is to have that child with her and her only, and that everything else that you see that surrounds that goal is going to be looked at with questioning eyes. So in the family court, the judge said there was no scintilla evidence that you have a poison. You didn't go to the hospital. You didn't have a history of anything medically that shows that you were poisoned. It sounds like you're just trying to support this goal of why you're here in family court. Then you take it over to criminal court, and what is he doing helping her move or pack or whatever? It sounds like she agreed to that so he can get over there and then she can carry out this murder. So nothing adds up, and if it didn't add up in family court, the burden is even higher in criminal court, and so I don't see the self-defense claim working.
But I think what hurts her here are the claims that she made in family court about him poisoning her, and the fact that the judge found that there was no evidence whatsoever to support her claim. So it makes anything she says now come into question, including the self-defense claim that she's raising as the reason why she shot him. Without that, without the issue of the poisoning, then maybe, she would have a bit more credibility because she did have some bruising on her or scratches or whatever. But the fact that she tried this once, tried to get him away from the child, and then comes up with this self-defense claim, I just think it sounds pretty weak. I think she wanted to have that child. I agree with Darnell, and she didn't want him part of her life. And that happens very frequently in family court.
Ashley Benefield has been charged with second-degree murder. The trial is set to begin at the end of this month in July of 2024, and jury selection is going to happen this next week. So in the meantime, Alicia, the baby, and Ashley have all been living a very happy life together as Ashley has been out on bond. In the meantime, she's been out posting lots of different videos of herself and her child coming off as a very loving, giving, and safe parent to the baby, which is genius because this is something that they can show in court, and the jury will either see a loving mother who was protecting herself and her child that she loves so much, or they will see a cold-blooded killer who probably hated Doug a lot and built a narrative in her head that fit her goals. Just to be happy, be alone, raise the baby, and live with her mother. What patterns did you notice in this woman before the trial does begin? I personally saw a lot, but since the trial is right around the corner, it will be interesting to see what the jury sees. What did you see? And what do you think is going to happen? We will most certainly be returning to this case to talk about it a little bit more. So let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. In the meantime, thank you guys so much for tuning in, loved ones, and I will be seeing you next time for the next content. I'm Chelsea J. Be blessed.